It's amrus, mango candy or mango jelly. Fantastic. Oh, matches my t-shirt. It's fantastic. Well, this would be some highway riding tips for beginners. I don't intend to educate anyone on how to ride on the highways, but that being said, these are Indian highways, very different from anywhere else in the world. There is a lane system and then there is not. You can't really go by the rules on Indian roads because they land you in trouble. At least that's been my experience. 99% of the times the rules don't apply because there's a lot of disparity here. All kinds of people from all walks of life, educated, uneducated, people who don't even know what these lines on the road mean. Everybody uses these roads, and so it's very hard for you to expect people to know what you know, and you may also know very little compared to somebody else who knows more. There's no civic sense being taught in school. There's no road sense being taught in school. So the schools here are pathetic in that respect. Very few people know what it means to be on the road, where to be on the road, and how to be on the road. So, cutting the long story short, no cribbing, no complaining. This is my experience of being on the roads for the last 25 plus years. To a degree, you make your own roads on Indian roads. This may come off as a statement that will piss off a lot of people, but then there is a lot of truth to it. And the ones who get pissed off, they would have at different points in their life, different times, would also agree to what I'm saying, because there's no other way on Indian roads. Yeah, so this would be a big tip for people who use the roads, highway commutes, or who have a habit of traveling. Any chance they take on the bike and they just are gone. And this is for those fellas who would love to take up motorcycle travel as a hobby. This is for those fellas. Yeah, so target fixation. That is what I'm going to talk about today. I never really knew what it was called until recently, but then we've always done it. What you do on the highway is you look not at the vehicle that you want to overtake, but the gap between the vehicle and the median, or the gap between the two vehicles that you want to bypass. So it's just like this. So if I want to take this gap right here, then I'm going to look at the opening. I'm just going to look at the opening. I'm not going to look at both these fellas, the car on my right, the bus on my front. If I were to continue looking at the bus and the car, then I will never know when to commit. It's extremely important to commit when you're doing highway business and also doing high-speed highway business. Low-speed highway business, of course, you can, double guess every single opportunity to overtake. But if you're doing high-speed highway business, then it becomes extremely important that you gauge a gap. You fix your target on the gap. You keep changing your viewpoint based on what you get to see as a gap in between two vehicles, in between the vehicle and the median. Just like this, you're looking at the gap, you're not looking at the vehicle in front of you. This is how you overtake. This is how we overtake when we race. This is how we overtake when you're faced with a tricky situation, not knowing what to do. You double guess overtaking on highways, and the chances of you having a crash or you getting squashed becomes 4 times more. There are 2 ways you can look at this. You shouldn't be overtaking at all, where you think there's a tiny margin of error. You shouldn't be. That's the right thing to do. Be 100% sure of taking a gap and then take that gap. But that's not the case in India. I'm being honest here. Very few people are honest on social media platforms. Everybody talks like they know everything, but then nobody really tells the truth the way it is. So I'm gonna look at that gap, and that's it. Commit on the gap. Don't end up looking at the bus. If you were to look at the bus, then you will never know when to. This also comes with, so again, gap between the red car and the yellow bus. That is all that I look at. Now I slowed down intentionally so that you guys could follow me. You're not going to be looking at the vehicles, because the vehicles will kind of throw you off your understanding of what needs to be done. Again, I'm going to be looking at the gap between the bus and the gap between the motorcyclist and the median. Now, classic example, gap between the bus and the lorry. That's what I aim for. I don't look at the bus trying to close in on the lorry. I'm just looking at the gap. Can I take that gap or can't I take that gap? Once you know, this also comes with some experience, little bit of experience of doing the same thing again and again and again. Once you know that that gap is good enough to be taken, you take that gap. Period. Now, the consequences of actions like these can be deadly. Like you take a gap and then there is something like a roadblock on for the moment you've cleared that gap. Yeah, bang, because you're at high speed, you're overtaking, you're taking that gap, and something on the road comes up as a surprise. Whoa, that should definitely be really tricky to deal with. And that's where riding skills come in. If you're good with motorcycling, that is, you're not lame, you're an active rider, then you will know what to do. Oh wow, look at that. So, you constantly scan for gaps and you only fix your target on the gap. I'm not looking at the motorcyclist, I'm looking at the gap between the lorry and the motorcyclist. Moving on to the next car. I'm not looking at the car, I'm looking at the gap between the bus and the car. That's it, that's where I'm focused. The bus and the car, of course, are going to be within your vision, your periphery vision too. You are going to know if they are twitchy or they're kind of inconsistent in their driving, and if they would close down on you. You are going to get that, but fixing your target on the motorcycle or fixing your target on the gap, that is what I'm talking about. Fix your target always on the gaps and you will definitely clear anything and everything with ease. Sometimes it could be deadly. You take a gap and then there you go. Something right after you've taken the gap as a roadblock on the road, and that's deadly. That's deadly to deal with. But that is a rarity. On Indian roads, not so much, but yeah, just saying. Again, not focusing on any of these vehicles, but the gap between the vehicles. Hopefully, maybe I'll illustrate on the video what I do, just so that, you know, it helps you fellas. 118 and 120 on this motorcycle is stable. That's what I like the most about it. It's definitely not comfy on the hands, but it's stable. It's super stable, and that's a huge thing. That's a game changer on highways. On highways, stability over anything and everything else. A motorcycle that is twitchy on the highways, not so good. Especially when you want to, do speed runs, like the gap in between the lorry and the car. That is what I look at. I don't look at the car. I'm not looking at the car. I'm not looking at the lorry. I'm looking at the gap in between them. So fixing your targets like that is going to ensure that you will definitely be able to clear everything with ease. No second guessing, fellas. Second guessing is deadly business. Just saying, this motorcycle is rock solid planted on the road, and that is a game changer, especially when it's a windy day. On a windy day, you need a heavy motorcycle that's not twitchy, that stays put. So I'm not looking at the cars, I'm looking at the gap. I'm aiming for the gaps. This is common sense, this is obvious. I get it, but then again, if you exercise this with consciously, like with an intent, like now I'm looking at the gap between these two vehicles. I'm just going to be looking at the gap between these two vehicles and not the vehicles themselves. That way you will always be more confident on the roads, and you will not come off as a motorcyclist that pisses people off, double guessing every single time. Again, where's my gap? Where's my gap? So that's the gap between the motorcyclist and the car. I couldn't have taken the gap between the car and the median because I was closing down on the car a little too fast. I had very little room to do that. So rather the gap between the motorcyclist and the car. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, very, very important that you fix your target on the gap between the vehicles. You see it, you take it. Well, if this helped, highway business on the Sherpa. If this helped, it helped. Then signing on for now. Ciao.